Thank you, Mr. President. The resolution before us today is clearly unacceptable to Sri Lanka. I will briefly deal with the content of the resolution and make it clear to the Council why this is so. Firstly, the preambular part of the text we believe is highly intrusive, is replete with misrepresentations, and in its overall scope accentuates the negative and eliminates or is dismissive of the positive. It also casts aspersions upon domestic processes that are ongoing without any foundation. Insofar as the preamble sets the backdrop for the ensuing substantive portion of a text, the tone set for the rest of the document is overwhelmingly pessimistic. Mr. President, the paragraph dealing with progress achieved ignores many areas of clear progress. It also seeks to allege continuing reports of discrimination on the grounds of religion or belief when this is manifestly not the case and forms no part of government policy or practice. Delegations in this room will acknowledge that in pluralistic societies, issues will be raised and that these issues are resolved in time. Sri Lanka's constructive engagement through the UPR process as recently as November 2012 through March 2013 unfortunately has been ignored. Secondly, Mr. President, I will deal with the operative paragraphs of the text which are indicative of an initiative that is based on a politicized process, violative of the principles of Resolution 5.1 and 5.2 that should guide all member states in facilitating the method of engagement and the mandate of this Council. This is not mere rhetoric, but is based on principle, objection and rejection of the motivation underlying this initiative. We are addressing the substance of the text and are not merely seeking to point out double standards adopted by some proponents. With reference to operative paragraph 1, I have already set out our concerns with regard to the High Commissioner's report. I reiterate that this report exceeds the original mandate given by this Council. I also wish to highlight that the report introduces new elements such as an international inquiry, incidentally first proposed by the High Commissioner as far back as 26th of May 2009, and invidiously smuggles in, by reference, the discredited report of the UN Secretary General's advisory panel of experts. That was an initiative that was never requested nor sanctioned by any intergovernmental process or forum. Moreover, Mr. President, as I stated, there was neither consultation nor concurrence by the government of Sri Lanka as to this report or its contents. Mr. President, the reference to the POE report in the Council, which was not sanctioned by an intergovernmental process, sets a dangerous precedent which can be manipulated by those with vested interests to introduce unsubstantiated reports against any member state of this Council or observer state. The government of Sri Lanka totally rejects attempts by the OHCHR and the proponents of this resolution to introduce elements of the POE report to the Council, thereby attempting to legitimize its recommendations and seek to impose them on Sri Lanka. Mr. President, with regard to operative paragraphs 2 and 3, we have every confidence in our domestic processes and mechanisms. These paragraphs tacitly assert that the process we have set in train are somehow deficient. I must stress that our efforts in this regard are ongoing and have not reached a conclusion. The text of paragraphs 4 and 5 seek to impose on Sri Lanka cooperation with the Office of the High Commissioner and special procedures in violation of the letter and spirit of UN General Assembly Resolution 60/251 and HRC Resolutions 5.1 and 5.2. For example, there is blatant contradiction of Resolution 5.2, especially Article 11B, which calls upon mandate holders to ensure that the field visits are conducted with the consent or at the invitation of the state concerned, unquote. We await dates from the High Commissioner in response to our invitation of April 2011. Also, Mr. President, the text does not recognize nor acknowledge that Sri Lanka has consistently engaged and is at present engaging with special procedures and has stated that it will continue to do so. With reference to operative paragraph 6, I must point out that the Sri Lankan conflict ended 3 years and 10 months ago. There are other ongoing conflicts and reported violations of rights as we speak in several parts of the world. Our concern is why this preoccupation with Sri Lanka? Why is this inordinate and disproportionate level of interest in a country that has successfully ended a 30-year conflict against terrorism and has demonstrated so much progress in a relatively short space of time? Repeated requests to the High Commissioner to present updates and reports are hardly warranted, Mr. President, given our open engagement with the Council at each session. Given the background and anomalous nature of this initiative, many countries would naturally have concerns relating to the draft resolution, as it could establish a bad, even dangerous, precedent in the annals of the Human Rights Council. Our main interest should be to keep the Council relevant, vital and focused, rather than straying down the deleterious path in pursuit of political agendas. Stakeholders may be forewarned that if the current tendency towards politicization and the pursuit of parallel agendas continues, the Human Rights Council may well suffer the fate of its predecessor, the UN Human Rights Commission. Mr. President, in conclusion, I must stress that those genuinely concerned about the future well-being of the people of Sri Lanka should encourage the country in its ongoing reconciliation process rather than single it out for disproportionate attention of this Council. We expect that the proponents of this resolution would do nothing to endanger the delicate reconciliation process ongoing in Sri Lanka, as well as the constructive engagement Sri Lanka is presently pursuing with the United Nations, the Human Rights Council, the High Commissioner and the OHCHR. We call upon members of this Council to safeguard the paramount principles this Council stands for, which are universality, impartiality, objectivity, non-selectiveness, constructive dialogue and cooperation, and predictability, among others. Mr. President, today it is Sri Lanka, tomorrow it may be any other country in this Council which does not adhere to the political objectives of some who profess to promote and protect human rights the world over, but pursue agendas other than human rights. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been informed by the Secretary that there are PBIs for these draft proposals. Copies of this statement were distributed in the room. I now give the floor to members of the Council who wish to make explanations of votes before the vote on the draft proposal. I give the floor to distinguished ambassador of Indonesia.
එක්සත් ජාතීන්ගේ මානව හිමිකම් කවුන්සිලයේ 22 වන සැසිවාරයේ ශ්‍රී ලංකාව සම්බන්ධ වන යෝජනාව පිළිබඳව සංවාදය සමගයි අප සජීවීව සම්බන්ධ වෙමින් සිටින්නේ. මේ අවස්ථාව වන විට රටවල් රැසක් මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් අදහස් පළ කළා. ඒ වගේම ශ්‍රී ලංකාව වෙනුවෙන් නියෝජිත කණ්ඩායමේ ප්‍රධානී අමාත්‍ය මහින්ද සමරසිංහ මහතා කතා කළා. අපි යලිත් සජීවී දර්ශන වෙත යමු.
That during this difficult time of transition, Sri Lanka deserves our support and encouragement. and to be given adequate time and leeway to complete their national reconciliation process. My delegation also is of the view that a more supportive and enabling international atmosphere will enable the government of Sri Lanka to effectively spend their vitally needed energy and resources to accelerate the progress being made and to address the existing challenges to the implementation of the National Action Plan. Mr. President, Indonesia commends Sri Lanka for her strong determination for peace and solid commitments to the promotion and protection of human rights in the country. Despite enormous challenges, we are encouraged by Sri Lanka continued progress in ensuring the betterment of every and each Sri Lankan citizens. My delegation would also like to express its appreciation of Sri Lanka's continued engagement with the international human rights mechanism. The adoption of Sri Lanka's UPR report last week is one valid example in this regard. Their acceptance of more than 100 recommendations and the provision of 19 voluntary commitments are commendable. We believe that they are contribute meaningfully to the swift implementation of the National Action Plan. On the other hand, we are also fully aware of the concern of the international community towards sustaining progress in the reconciliation and accountability process in Sri Lanka. Indonesia therefore encourages the government of Sri Lanka to continue to do its utmost to enable tangible improvement on the ground. Furthermore, we underline the importance of enhancing the credibility and the reliability of the national process with full cognizance of the human rights principles. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you, Excellency. I will now give the floor to distinguished Thailand.
Mr. President, Thailand appreciates the efforts made by the main sponsor to find common ground on the draft resolution now tabled before us and to accommodate the concerns of all sides. We, however, remain concerned that important elements of the draft are based upon the report of the OHCHR, which seems to have gone beyond the mandate given to it in Resolution 19.2. We are therefore not in position to support the draft resolution and will have to vote against it. Our decision has also taken into account the fact that progress has been and continues to be made in the reconciliation process in Sri Lanka. This process is continuing with the government of Sri Lanka implementing many recommendations of the LLRC. Given the nature of what the country has been through, this flow will take time, and the international community should support Sri Lanka in its efforts. Furthermore, we believe the government of Sri Lanka has been sincere in its engagement with the Council, having, among other things, received an OHCHR technical mission and taken part constructively in the UPR process. We therefore urge Sri Lanka to continue to take concrete steps to implement the recommendations of the LLRC, particularly to ensure accountability and combat impunity. Additionally, we urge Sri Lanka to revisit recommendations of the LLRC, which has not yet been included in its National Plan of Action. Thailand also hopes that the High Commissioner will be able to visit Sri Lanka at the earliest opportunity to assess the situation on the ground and that appropriate advice and technical assistance be provided to Sri Lanka with the consent of and in close consultation with the government of Sri Lanka so as to have a genuine impact on the ground in the interest of its people. Thank you.